The world had fractured, a jagged tear between realms, unleashing an unseen terror into the night. Ethereal, malicious spirits called AjoMuos surged through the gaping rift, their forms barely discernible yet palpably ominous, as they spilled into the moonlit landscapes of the human domain. Villages once bustling with the laughter of children and the camaraderie of neighbors now stood desolate, shrouded in a silent dread. Each year, as the seasons cycled from bloom to barren, these small havens of humanity were swallowed by the growing shadow. Families, carrying whatever they could, trudged through dusty roads leading south, where the earth scorched under an unforgiving sun, a lesser evil compared to the spectral onslaught they fled. Fires flickered at camp edges where the dispossessed gathered, their faces etched with the resignation of a people constantly pushed back, their eyes reflecting a stark truth. There was nowhere left to run, and no means to fight back. The air was thick with despair, the horizon a blur of heat and hopelessness. Dawn broke quietly over Obira, the first rays of sunlight spilling across the modest village huts, woven together with thatch and mud. Inside one such dwelling, Jidenna awoke with a start to the disquieting sound of shuffling feet. His eyes snapped open, tracing the silhouette of his wife as she moved with a strange, erratic gait towards the doorway of their obi. The room was still dim, shadows clinging to the corners, but a palpable tension filled the air. Confusion furrowed his brow as he called softly to her, receiving no reply but the unsettling grip of silence. Suddenly, his heart stopped. She had a knife. Before he could fully comprehend the situation, a scream tore from his throat, raw and filled with dread, as she plunged the blade into their sleeping children nestled under woven blankets. With adrenaline surging, Jidenna lunged forward, his arms wrapping around her in a desperate tackle. The knife clattered to the ground. He quickly bound her thrashing limbs with a long piece of fabric, his hands trembling as he anchored her to the earth-stained floor. His mind raced with panic and sorrow, but then, a small noise, a sigh. He looked up, tears ready to fall, and saw his children standing in the doorway, wide-eyed but unharmed, their attention having been drawn away by the chaos erupting outside just in time. Relief flooded through him, quickly replaced by a cold realization. The evil spirits, the AjoMuos, had breached their village. Without a moment's hesitation, Jidenna bolted to the rear of his hut. There, under the watchful gaze of the rising moon, stood the Yuta tree, its branches sturdy and sprawling. He tore several branches from the tree. These branches, imbued with protective essence, were known to repel the darkest spirits. As he distributed the rough, aromatic branches to his family, his voice was calm but firm, directing them to safety beyond the village limits. The urgency was palpable. Their survival depended on escaping the malevolent force that had turned neighbor against neighbor in the once quiet village, Obira. Jidenna quickly orchestrated the setup of a makeshift sanctuary on the outskirts of the village. With deliberate authority, he outlined a rigorous protocol at the entrance of the refuge, leveraging the mystical properties of the Yuta branches. Every entrant, seeking asylum from the invisible terror, was required to endure 3 lashes from the branches, a harsh but necessary measure believed to cleanse the spirit-infected souls. Jidenna's extended family members, robust and unyielding, stood by his side, enforcing this grim rule with a sense of urgent duty. Relief washed over Jidenna when he saw his friends, Somto and Amara, emerge from the direction of the village, now a silhouette against the flames that devoured homes and memories alike. They were competent and brave, the best among his peers. Without hesitation, he entrusted them with the leadership of the safe haven. Ignoring their protests, Jidenna dashed towards the inferno-engulfed village, each step driven by a desperate hope to find his wife. As he navigated through the narrow, smoke-filled pathways, surreal sights unfolded before him, Shadows danced wildly against the fiery backdrop, and ethereal figures flitted in and out of the smoky veil, their forms distorted and menacing. The air was thick with the smell of burning thatch and the eerie cries of the damned. Heart pounding and lungs burning, Jidenna finally reached his wife. She was still, her body oddly calm amidst the turmoil. As he raised the Yuta branch, prepared to deliver the purging lashes, his eyes caught a glimpse of something terrifying, a deep, crimson line etched across her neck. The weapon fell from his numb fingers as a guttural roar of anguish escaped him, a sound so primal and pained that it pierced the veil between worlds, echoing mournfully across the village. Spirits and humans alike paused, momentarily united in the face of such raw, unfiltered grief. The camp was a macabre tableau of sorrow and determination as the moon reached its peak. The village now brimmed with the animated corpses, ghouls of those they had once known and loved. These ghouls, insidious in their mimicry of life, marched awkwardly towards the place of refuge, setting a chilling stage for the night's grim spectacle. Jidenna now returned, his face streaked with tears that caught the dying light, stepped forward to address the beleaguered remnants of the Arugo tribe. Clenching his fists, he summoned a voice both broken and defiant. "My brothers, my sisters, tonight, we stand on the precipice of a battle, not just for our lives, but for the soul of our tribe. Look around you. We are surrounded by shadows of the past, but we must not let fear root us to the ground. We fight, not because we hope to win, but because we must uphold the spirit of Arugo that has lived within us since the dawn of our ancestors." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the old and young alike, each armed with nothing more than sticks and stones, a poignant testament to their unyielding spirit. "We fight in honor of those we have loved and lost, whose faces are now twisted into forms meant to frighten us. Let their visages not weaken us, but fuel our rage against the dark spirits that dare corrupt their memory. We may not emerge victorious, but by the gods, we will show these painless ghouls that the heart of Arugo beats strong, even in the chests of our smallest children." A murmur of assent grew into a chorus of roars as the tribe rallied around his words, their grief transformed into a fierce resolve. Youngsters, no taller than the spears they could barely lift, stood shoulder to shoulder with their elders, their small hands gripping their primitive weapons with grim determination. As midnight descended, the air thick with the smell of impending battle, the tribe of Arugo readied themselves to meet their fate together, their chorus of defiance ringing out into the darkness, a stark contrast to the silent, sinister preparations of their ghastly foes. The tension peaked as the ghouls, with unnerving coordination, surged toward the tribe. The air was electric with fear and desperation, cries of defiance rising from the throats of the Arugo as they braced for impact. But just as the first wave of ghouls closed in, a thunderous crashing through the underbrush heralded an unexpected arrival. From the dense treeline, four well-armored soldiers burst forth, their armor clanking with the rapidity of their charge. Each warrior was adorned with Yuta leaves, expertly tied around their limbs and torsos, forming a barrier of spirit-repelling foliage. They were like apparitions from folklore, arriving just as all seemed lost. One of the soldiers, a woman with a commanding presence, raised her hand high. Chanting in a language that seemed to tap into ancient powers, she unleashed a spell of potent force. As her voice crescendoed, an ethereal wind swept through the camp, wrenching fragments of spirits from the ghouls. The effect was instantaneous. The ghouls staggered, their forms shuddering violently as the spectral pieces tore free from their corrupted hosts. These fragments, now ripped from their unwilling vessels, swirled into a tumultuous vortex, coalescing into a singular, large spirit, a monstrous entity pulsating with stolen life. Yet its existence was fleeting. Another of the soldiers stepped forward, his hand gripping the hilt of a sword that hummed with mysterious energy. With a solemn determination, he drew the blade through the heart of the swirling mass. The touch of the sword did not just dissipate the spirit, it obliterated it, leaving nothing but a dissipating mist in the air and a profound silence in its wake. The tribe watched in awe and relief as the fallen ghouls collapsed lifelessly to the ground, their unholy animation extinguished. The sudden turn of events, from despair to miraculous rescue, filled the survivors with a mix of gratitude and wonder as they stared at their saviors, warriors who had seemingly stepped out of legend to aid them in their darkest hour. Jidenna, Somto, and Amara surrounded the four mysterious riders, their expressions a mix of curiosity and urgency. Before they could utter a word, the soldiers raised gloved hands, signaling their inability to linger. Yet, their leader, a stoic figure with eyes like flint, paused to impart a crucial revelation. The Muanjos have surrounded us. There is no more escape to the south, he began, his voice low and urgent, cutting through the palpable despair that hung heavy in the air. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered survivors, a realization of the grim truth settling over them like a shroud. Another rider, his face hidden beneath a helm adorned with feathers, spoke with a quiet intensity. "The spirits have encircled these lands for a purpose," he declared, his words a beacon of unforeseen possibility. "They seek to extinguish the family whose bloodline can seal the rift between the physical and spiritual realms and banish the evil spirits from our lands forever." As the weight of his revelation sank in, the people's emotions swirled in a tempest of amazement, anger, and disbelief. This revelation, the first of its kind, shattered their perceptions and reshaped their understanding of the world they inhabited. Somto, in particular, could contain his turmoil no longer. His voice cracked with raw emotion as he demanded answers, his eyes blazing with righteous fury. "Why had this secret been kept from us?" he demanded, his words a searing indictment of the years of fear and uncertainty they had endured. "We've lived in shadows, haunted by nightmares, when there was a solution within our grasp all along. We deserve to know why." The air hung heavy with tension as the riders exchanged solemn glances, the weight of their knowledge a burden shared by few. Yet, they spurred their mounts onward, leaving the tribe to grapple with the revelation that had upended their world. As the dust stirred by the departing horsemen settled, a solemn silence enveloped the crowd. They were left with a sheathed dagger, tossed almost dismissively by one of the riders to Jidenna, who caught it reflexively. His fingers wrapped around the leather sheath, feeling its weight and the burden it symbolized. Amara, noticing Somto lost in a whirlwind of confusion and rage, grasped his shoulder, her touch snapping him back to the present. With the crowd's attention shifting toward her, a palpable sense of expectancy hung in the air. She stepped forward, her stance firm, her voice carrying both strength and inspiration as she addressed the tribe. "We stand at the precipice of annihilation, not just of our bodies, but of our spirits and heritage," she began, her voice resolute. "The truth has been revealed, not to overwhelm us, but to unite us. We have a purpose now, more significant than any fear that can grip us." Her words echoed across the crowd, stirring the embers of courage in their hearts. "Let us join in the defense of the bloodline that sealed the rift. Let us be the shield that guards humanity from darkness. This is not the end, but a call to arms. Will you stand with me?" Moved by Amara's fervor, the people, still nursing their grief and shock, found a new resolve. Their murmurs of agreement swelled into a chorus of assent. Even Jidenna, who had silently observed, felt the stirrings of leadership awaken within him. With the village chief and his family lost to the chaos, the mantle of leadership unclaimed, Jidenna stepped forward. His reputation as a formidable warrior and a respected member of the tribe preceded him. With Amara's speech igniting a newfound hope and purpose among the people, he addressed them with a commanding presence. "We have lost much, but we are not defeated," Jidenna proclaimed, holding the sheathed dagger aloft. "We will fight not just for survival, but for our future. We will honor those we have lost by protecting those who remain. I ask you to stand with me, to fight with me." His voice, imbued with a potent mix of grief and determination, resonated with every heart present. They needed a leader, and Jidenna, with his extraordinary prowess and unyielding spirit, was their chosen beacon in the looming darkness. With a renewed sense of purpose, the tribe rallied behind him, ready to defend their destiny and reclaim hope from the jaws of despair. The morning was fraught with a heavy, somber air as Jidenna prepared to lead his band of warriors away from what remained of their village. The women, children, and aged men watched in a silent vigil, their eyes a mixture of fear, hope, and resolve. They would rebuild, each hammer stroke and lifted beam a testament to their determination to forge a future from the ashes of despair. Jidenna, clad in leather and iron, stood tall among his 300 chosen warriors. Each man was a silhouette against the rising sun, their faces set with grim determination. On every warrior, including Jidenna, Yuta leaves were securely tied. The leaves rustled softly as they moved, a constant reminder of their purpose and the spiritual protection they afforded. This was a strategy borrowed from the mysterious Four Horsemen, a practical magic that would shield them from the dark spirits' insidious reach. With the coordinates from the dagger firmly in mind, Jidenna led the column forward. The dagger itself, now secured at his side, was more than a weapon. Engraved upon its blade were coordinates that promised a convergence of destiny and duty. As they marched, the landscape around them shifted from the charred remnants of their homes to the wild, untamed frontiers that lay beyond their village boundaries. Each man was lost in his thoughts, mentally preparing for what might come, steeling himself against the horrors they might face. Jidenna moved among his warriors, his presence a steady, reassuring force. The journey to the coordinates etched on the dagger stretched into days, each passing hour a test of endurance and resolve. Along the way, the occasional ghoul ambushed them, emerging from the twisted underbrush or descending silently from the gnarled branches of ancient trees. These skirmishes were fierce, though brief, sharpening their combat skills and drawing the warriors closer in their shared quest for survival. Amara, already a formidable warrior in her own right, began to stand out even more significantly amongst her peers. Her skill with the blade became almost legendary within the ranks, each swing and parry executed with a lethal grace that left her opponents dismantled in the dirt. Samto, ever observant and analytical, made a crucial discovery during one of these encounters. He realized that targeting a ghoul's spine proved far more effective than the previously assumed method of decapitation. This insight quickly spread through the ranks, altering their tactics and giving them a much-needed edge in combat. During their arduous travel, Jidenna noticed the wear on Amara's boots, which had become nearly unusable. One evening, by the flickering light of the campfire, he presented her with a sturdy pair of leather boots he had carried as a spare. Finally, after days of relentless marching, they arrived at the coordinates, the site of a monastery. It stood like a beleaguered fortress, surrounded by hordes of ghouls that swarmed around its high stone walls and iron gates. The sight of the monastery, besieged and isolated, struck a chord of doubt among Jidenna's warriors. Whispers of misgiving spread through the ranks. The sight of the overwhelming enemy force, their numbers far exceeding their own, sowed seeds of fear and uncertainty. Sensing the growing unease, Jidenna climbed a small rise, allowing him to stand outlined against the setting sun. His voice, firm and resonant, cut through the murmurs of apprehension. "Brothers and sisters in arms, look upon that monastery, not as a bastion of despair, but as the beating heart of our mission. Inside those walls lies our purpose, the very soul we are sworn to protect. We do not fight for glory, nor merely for survival, but for a future where our children might live free from the shadows that chase us. Let fear not cripple us, but fuel us. For we carry the light in this overwhelming darkness. Together, we will break this siege. Bolstered by Jidenna's words, the warriors rallied, their spirits reignited with fervent purpose. Samto, taking the lead with his newfound knowledge, directed the warriors to target the ghouls' spines in a surprise assault. With a unified roar that echoed through the trees and shook the leaves, Jidenna's warriors charged. They descended upon the besiegers with a ferocious intensity, their resolve hardened by the knowledge of what lay at stake. The battle that ensued was fierce, each warrior channeling every ounce of their training and newfound tactics into the fray, determined to break the siege and safeguard humanity's last hope nestled within the monastery's ancient walls. As the fierce charge of Jidenna's warriors shattered the ghoul perimeter, it created a critical opening for the besieged inhabitants of the monastery. The 30 armored guardians of the monastery, staunch and battle-weary, quickly formed a protective cordon around a remarkably unassuming family, the AjoMuos, whose lineage held the key to sealing the rift between the worlds. In the midst of this chaotic exodus, as they hurriedly made their escape on horseback, Amara noticed the patriarch of the AjoMuos family, an elderly man burdened not just by the weight of his years, but by the enormity of his family's legacy. His mount, older and visibly strained, stumbled, threatening to fall behind. Without hesitation, Amara rode up beside him, offering her sturdy horse. "Take mine. She's strong and swift," Amara insisted, her voice firm over the din of escaping hooves and the distant groans of ghouls. Gratefully, the patriarch accepted, his aged eyes locking with hers in a moment of silent understanding that transcended the chaos around them. Amara quickly helped him onto her horse, then took his slower mount, ensuring no delay in their flight. Once they reached a relative safety atop a nearby hill, their brief respite was shattered by the sight of an even larger horde of ghouls surging towards them, a dark tide ready to engulf. The leader of the monastery's guardians, a seasoned warrior clad in armor that bore the scars of countless battles, approached Jidenna. "We must push north towards the front lines," he said urgently. "Only there can we close the rift that fuels these nightmares." Jidenna nodded, his resolve stealing once more. He turned to his assembled warriors, who stood catching their breath, their faces marked by fatigue. Climbing a rock for elevation, Jidenna's voice rang out, clear and compelling. "Warriors, ahead lies not just another battle, but the very crux of our struggle. We carry with us the hope of all humanity, the AjoMuos bloodline. Our mission is clear. We must breach the front lines and seal the rift that bleeds these dark spirits into our world. Stand firm, for this is only another step we take towards our salvation. Together, we have faced the shadow. Now, let us take the pivotal step to chase it back into the darkness." His speech rallied the warriors, their spirits lifting despite the encroaching danger. With renewed vigor and a clear directive, they quickly formed up, ready to cut a path through the advancing ghoul horde, forging towards their ultimate goal. Their unity and resolve, strengthened by acts of kindness and shared burdens, became their greatest weapon as they prepared to face the looming threat head-on. As the warriors charged forward with undaunted courage, the battlefield suddenly roiled with an even greater menace. A colossal spirit, drawn by the surge of combat, manifested itself as a ferocious tornado. It swept across the field with indiscriminate fury, a whirlwind of spectral energy that tossed soldiers, warriors, ghouls, and the vital carriers of the AjoMuos bloodline like mere leaves in a storm. The chaos was deafening, the screams of men lost amidst the howling winds. When the tornado dissipated as swiftly as it had formed, those unfortunate enough to have been flung far from the main group were quickly overwhelmed. Ghouls, seizing the opportunity, piled upon the scattered and disoriented, their ghastly forms blurring into a frenzy of motion and violence. The remnants of Jidenna's force, battered and diminished, managed to regroup and press northward, away from the immediate threat, but into uncertain peril. As they moved, they took stock of their numbers. Of the original 300 tribal warriors, only 173 remained, many among them bearing severe injuries. A grimmer realization dawned. None of the AjoMuos family seemed to have survived the chaos, and Amara was nowhere to be found. Amidst the heavy breaths and the soft groans of the injured, murmurs of dissent began to surface. Several warriors, their faces etched with fatigue and despair, openly questioned Jidenna's decision to lead them north. Why did we even come this way? Was this march north nothing but a march to our doom? One of the warriors demanded loudly, his voice a mix of frustration and grief. Jidenna, standing amidst his dwindling band of warriors, felt the weight of leadership heavier than ever. His eyes, which had once held a fierce resolve, now flickered with the fires of anger and sorrow. He turned to address his men, his voice rising over the murmurs. "I led you here not as slaves, but as brothers in arms. None of you were forced to join this cause. You came of your own will, knowing the dangers," Jidenna declared, his tone harsh with raw emotion. "If any of you wish to leave, do so now. I will not hold you here against your will. We fight not just for survival, but for a future." His voice broke slightly, the weight of their losses momentarily overcoming him. A future for all humanity. If that is not a cause worth fighting for, you are free to turn back. The camp was shrouded in an almost palpable gloom, the air thick with the heavy silence of despair. The loss of the AjoMuos family, a blow so severe, had sapped the remaining warriors of much of their resolve. Tents stood in haphazard arrangement. Warriors moved slowly, their actions lacking the vigor they once had. Jidenna, amidst the somber quietude, gathered his warriors. His presence, always commanding, now bore the weight of shared grief and responsibility. "We will tend to our wounded and wait here for any survivors of the attack," he announced, his voice steady despite the grim circumstances. "Tomorrow, I will head further north." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Many thought him mad to press further into such danger. His declaration hung heavy in the air overnight, as warriors debated quietly amongst themselves the wisdom of his decision. By morning, a small group, loyal and resolute, had decided to join him in his seemingly ill-fated journey. As they prepared to depart, a stir at the camp's edge drew all eyes. Emerging from the mists of dawn, a figure familiar and fierce, Amara. Behind her, 5 bloodline guards and 4 warriors approached, leading a horse that bore a precious burden. A small boy, solemn and wide-eyed, the last survivor of the AjoMuos bloodline. The camp, for a moment, held its breath, then erupted in a mixture of relief and renewed sorrow for those lost. Jidenna, Somto, and Amara met in a tight embrace, a silent exchange of relief and resolve passing between them. They pulled back, their faces marked by tears and smiles, a complex tapestry of emotions. Jidenna turned to address his people, now with a glimmer of hope alighting his features. "This boy," he began, gesturing to the child who looked around with a mixture of awe and fear, "carries the future of our fight. We lost many, but as long as he lives, our journey, our sacrifices, have not been in vain." The revelation invigorated the camp. Conversations buzzed anew, with warriors rallying around the newfound symbol of their cause. Plans were quickly made, with renewed focus and determination, to protect the boy and continue their perilous journey north. Jidenna, watching his people come alive with purpose once again, knew the road ahead was fraught with danger. Yet, the return of Amara and the survival of the young Amawire heir bolstered his spirit. They would move forward, together, bound by a cause greater than their own lives, a battle for the very soul of humanity. With Amara's return and the revelation of the young survivor, Anyakachi, the last of the Amawire bloodline, the camp's atmosphere shifted from despair to a renewed sense of mission. Amara, leveraging the moment, spoke passionately to the assembled warriors. Her words, a mix of motivation and gentle reproach, reminded them of their shared purpose and the dire necessity of their quest. "We're not just fighting for our lives," she declared, "but for the very essence of our world. Every step north is a step towards reclaiming our future." Ejiro, the leader of the surviving bloodline guard, detailed their next crucial steps. "To reach the rift and have any chance of closing it, we need the special swords," he explained. These weapons, capable of binding and dissipating even the strongest spirits with a mere touch, were essential for their mission's success. Unfortunately, they only possessed two, and the remaining needed weapons were cached at the base of Mount Aburu. The journey through the wilderness was arduous and fraught with peril. The landscape was littered with the fallen, both human and ghoul, a grim reminder of the relentless conflict. Ejiro, throughout the trek, offered support to Jidenna, sharing his knowledge of survival techniques and spiritual lore. His actions not only eased their passage, but also deepened the bond of leadership between them. Meanwhile, Amara took it upon herself to look after young Anyakachi, teaching him how to remain alert and safe in such dangerous terrains. Her warmth towards him was not just protective, but also educational, preparing him, even at his young age, for the responsibilities his bloodline carried. As they neared Mount Aburu, the challenges increased. They skillfully avoided encounters with roaming ghouls, moving with stealth and caution. But upon reaching the base of the mountain, their hearts sank. A weary guard, injured and barely conscious, delivered the devastating news. The cache of weapons had been seized by cultists, followers of the AjoMuos, and taken to the mountain's peak to be destroyed in the lava of its volcano. The news hit like a physical blow. The mountain loomed ominously above them, its peak shrouded in clouds and mystery. The path forward was clear, yet daunting. With heavy hearts but unbroken spirits, Jidenna, Ejiro, Amara, and their band of warriors prepared to ascend Mount Aburu. Their mission was no longer just a retrieval. It was now a race against time to intercept the cultists and secure the weapons essential to their quest. The climb would be perilous. As they ascended the steep slopes of Mount Aburu, the urgency and the sheer scale of their mission weighed heavily on Jidenna. The revelation that the swords were being moved to the summit, to be destroyed in the volcanic fires, prompting a desperate rally. "Those are heavy. It would take a while to haul them to the top. We can catch up," he asserted, trying to infuse some optimism into his weary band. But the strain of continuous battles, the weight of leadership, and the haunting losses suffered along the way finally took their toll on Jidenna. His mind, overwhelmed by the relentless pressure and the stakes of their quest, began to fray at the edges. Standing momentarily dazed, his gaze lost to the mountain path, he muttered disjointedly about strategies and losses, his spirit teetering on the edge of despair. It was Samto who noticed the change in his friend. With a firm grip on Jidenna's shoulder, he shook him gently, snapping him back to the present. "We need you now, more than ever," Samto urged, grounding Jidenna with his resolve and presence. The moment passed, and though Jidenna's eyes still held traces of the storm within, his determination returned. Their climb continued, the peak almost within reach, when Samto, ever vigilant, sensed an impending threat. His warning came just a heartbeat too late. The cultists, aware of their pursuit, triggered an avalanche to halt their ascent. Snow and debris cascaded down the mountain, engulfing the path and sweeping away several of their warriors in a cold, merciless tide. The survivors, battered, had no other choice but forward, reaching the volcano's lip with grim determination. There, they confronted the cultists in a fierce battle, their rage and desperation lending strength to their arms. The cultists were slain, but the victory was bittersweet. Out of the 1,000 special swords, only a dozen remained untouched by the volcanic fires. The rest had been tossed into the molten depths, lost forever. Morale among Jidenna's warriors hit an all-time low. The survivors stood at the volcano's edge, staring into the fiery pit where their hopes had been incinerated. The weight of their losses, the exhaustion from their relentless journey, and the near-total destruction of the very weapons they had come so far to retrieve left them defeated and directionless. Sudden tension crackled in the air, sharp and electric, as Amara and her warriors tightened the circle around Ajiro and his blood guards atop the volcanic lip. The harsh wind carried the acrid scent of sulfur and the distant roar of the volcano's churn, mirroring the turmoil unfolding among the group. "What is going on here?" Jidenna demanded, stepping forward with a commanding presence, his eyes darting between Amara's fierce stance and Ajiro's defiant expression. Amara's voice was cold with fury. Ajiro and his men planned to kill Anyakachi. Ajiro responded, his anger barely contained. "The child must be sacrificed in a sacred ritual at the rift. It is the only way to permanently seal it. I am the only one left who knows this right. If you kill me, you doom us all. The rift will remain open forever." The gravity of his words hung heavily over them, stirring a whirlwind of moral conflict. Amara, her resolve as sharp as the blade she wielded, turned to Jidenna. "Allowing this to continue would mean you consent to the murder of an innocent boy," she accused, her eyes searching his for a flicker of dissent. Jidenna felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, a dilemma as perilous as the fiery abyss before him. On one hand, the potential to permanently close the rift and end the torment and chaos unleashed upon the world. On the other, the life of Anyakachi, a child thrust into the center of a cosmic battle through no choice of his own. His heart wrenched at the thought of such a sacrifice, yet the strategic part of his mind understood the brutal calculus of their dire situation. Looking between the tense faces of his allies and adversaries, Jidenna knew that whatever decision he made would mark his soul forever. "Is there truly no other way?" he asked Ajiro, desperation coloring his tone, hoping against hope for another solution. Ajiro met his gaze, unflinching. "There is no other way known to me. The ritual requires a sacrifice, and he is the last of the bloodline that can seal the breach." Jidenna turned away, his gaze lost in the swirling mists of the volcano. The decision lay upon him, heavy as the mountain under which they stood. Could he live with the decision to sacrifice a child for the greater good? Or would he search for another path, risking the chance that the rift might never be closed? His next words would tip the scales in a direction from which there could be no return. If you enjoyed this intense journey and are eager to see how Jidenna's dilemma unfolds, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Your support not only encourages me, but will also ensure you don't miss out on the thrilling continuation of this story. I've put a lot of effort into crafting these moments, and your engagement helps me keep bringing these stories to life. Stay tuned for part 2, where the fate of Anyakachi and the rift will be revealed.